Welcome to the Author to Authority podcast. And today I've got Mario Porreca. And I'm excited about this podcast. Actually, I've been waiting to do this podcast because we've been working on Mario's book called What's Your Cheesecake? And we're going to talk about that book today. So I want to give a shout out to Mario just as we begin as part of the introduction, because the reason you're listening to this podcast, part of it has to do with Mario. He is my podcast mentor, and he has been the one who has guided me and supported me throughout this entire process of bringing Author to Authority to life. And, you know, I've learned so much from him during this process about creating a wonderful podcast. So if you're listening to this right now, you can give Mario a quick clap of applause because he was essential in getting this podcast to life. So welcome to the show, Mario.
Kim, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. I love your show. And, the whole book, as you've mentioned, we're working on my book, and this is actually my fourth book that I've done, first with you, fourth overall. And I can unequivocally say that working with you has made life infinitely easier for me as far as the book process goes. So I've done it many different ways over the first three books, but this has been like the best process out of any of them that I've experienced.
Oh, thank you, Mario.
It's been awesome.
So you're probably wondering, what's your cheesecake about?
It's an interesting title, isn't it?
Yeah. So Mario, what I'm going to let you do is just share a bit of your story and how you decided to do What's Your Cheesecake?
Mm-hmm. Well, my story is a little lengthy, so I'll try to cut it down. I started as a chef. That's where I started. Some things happened organically that led me into the coaching space. So I started with the coaching space. And as I was in the coaching space, some things led to another, and it ended up, I wrote my first book. And that's where it all started. It actually started with a book, and it was a cookbook at the time. And as I was writing that book, a large health and wellness company found out that I was writing it and commissioned me to write one for them. So at the same time, I was in the early stages of self-publishing with my book. Mm-hmm. And then I was doing a conventional publisher, traditional publishing deal with them for that book. So I kind of got to experience both sides of things. And this was back in about 2010. So this was before Amazon and all the print on demand and all of those things happened. So for me to self-publish my book, I had to pretty much use my entire life savings to that point to make that happen. And I had to buy, because mind you, these are hardcover books with full color photos. And it was like,
show me the bunny, 11. Honey.
Yep, that's what it was. And because it was a cookbook, that was important to me. So I'll never forget the day that the books came in, and I was sitting in my office. And so that feeling when you're holding that first book in your hand and you're looking at it and it's real, and it's such a great feeling. But I didn't really get to live it that long, because as I was holding it and looking at it and so excited about it, I put it down on my desk and I looked around my office and I had like stacks of cardboard boxes full of books around me. And that's when I said, how the heck am I going to sell these? And that's when the fun began. So I had all these books and I had to sell them because I put all this investment into it. Mm-hmm. And so I started doing live events. I started booking out hotel rooms, banquet rooms, and going in and doing cooking demos. And so I'd sell tickets, I'd do demos, and I'd sell books. And, the second one I did, the first one I did went really well. I had people there. They loved it. We had a great time. Second one I did, I had about, 50% more people there than I had the first one. But a whole series of things happened, and it was like a horrible experience. Like I lost electricity, so my cooking equipment wouldn't work. So imagine trying to cook without electricity and without heat. So my chef instincts kicked in. Mm-hmm. And there's this term in the industry called being in the weeds. I'm sure you've heard of it. And that means you're like way behind on everything, and you're so far in the weeds that you can't see a way out. And
been there, done that.
Oh yeah, that instinct kicked in. So as a chef, you're trained when you're in the weeds to just block everything else out and just focus on one thing at a time and what's in front of you. And so that's what I did. Instead of like packing it up and being like the source. So what happened was we lost electricity. So I just went into that mode where I was trying to do things, trying to stay entertaining, trying to make things happen. Then the electricity came back on about a half hour later. So I'm like, okay, I can get caught up. So I try to cook things really fast so that people have stuff to try. So then maybe they'll buy a book before they leave. And well, when you try to cook things fast, it causes a little more smoke, and hotel rooms really aren't equipped for that. So what happened was the fire alarm went off, the whole hotel gets evacuated, and I'm like, oh boy. So we sort that whole mess out. Everyone comes back in. I'm profusely apologizing, get everything done. And I think people felt bad for me more than anything. But so then they leave. And at the end of it, I'm cleaning up and a lady comes up that I've never met before. And she said, she looks at me and she goes, "You had a pretty rough day today, huh?" And I was like, that's one way of putting it. And I'm like apologizing still and trying to, get through it. And she goes, "Well, I'm so-and-so, and I work for the local CBS affiliate. And here's my card. If you could do this well without working equipment, I'd love to see what you could do with working equipment. Call me." So I followed up on that, and that's what landed me my first TV gig. So it was out of that, what seemed to be the lowest point during this whole thing actually became the biggest opportunity because of the way I handled it. Mm-hmm. So then I did that TV gig, and that's when I fell in love with media, because I realized I just got my book in front of how many people in one place. I didn't have to go and do all these events. I didn't have to sell a bunch of tickets. I mean, I did one TV event, and it wasn't just the airing of that TV show that made the difference. It was the fact that I got, and this was back, they gave me before like all this digital download stuff, because like I said, this is like 2011. So they gave me a CD, if you remember what those are, a CD of the segment that I did on TV. So then I took that CD and uploaded it to YouTube, and now I had this piece of digital content that I could put out and be shared and it was promoting my book and showing me cooking a dish. So I realized that, and that's when I started booking as many TV gigs as I could. I started doing research and reaching out. I became my own publicist, essentially. And over the course of the next 2.5 years, I did over 70 different TV shows up and down the East Coast. And through that, I met a lot of different people. And I was always looking at, how do I make this better and how do I get in front of more people? And that led me into radio. And so I was always intrigued by radio, but I never really knew how to break into it till I met a producer on a TV show that had a radio background. And he gave me the in to get into radio. So I ended up having my own radio show, my own TV show. This is what this all led to. I was writing 3 weekly columns for the local newspaper. I was creating digital content for them. I was doing live. I was teaching it live at cooking schools, doing live events, doing public speaking, and I was doing some magazine work. So I had my hand.
When did you ever sleep?
Not often. I was traveling a lot. I was doing the whole thing. I had my hand in pretty much every form of media at that time. And that's when I discovered podcasting. That was back in February of 2011 when I did my first podcast. And, that's when the game changed, because when I looked at podcasting at that time, I looked at it and I compared it to broadcasting, to radio. And executionally, yes, they're very similar. You talk into a microphone and then people listen to the end result. However, the strategy is very different between the two. In broadcasting, the strategy is your signal, your broadcast signal only goes so far. So you really are focused on the people within this area. And so your whole goal is to get as many people as possible to tune into your station at certain times of the day. You figure out what those times are where they're going to tabulate the ratings. And if you can get more people than anyone else, then your ratings go up. And then you leverage those ratings to advertisers to increase advertising rates and generate revenue and, increase your revenue. And that's how broadcasting typically works. Podcasting, on the other hand, you're not handicapped by location. Now, yes, you can syndicate a radio program and then you can be all over the place. But I was on 5 different stations at one point. I syndicated my program, and each station that you bring on is a whole job in and of itself, because you have to find advertisers in that area and you have to do all sorts of different things. And then, different managements of different stations, it becomes a whole thing. And the more stations you bring on, the more complicated life gets. And so when you see these guys that are syndicated all over the US, they have teams that's what they do. They control the syndication. And so I looked at podcasting and I'm like, look, anyone with a computer or smartphone has access to this. It's not about location. It's about unless you make it about the location, it's not. It's about the subject matter. And I control my content. So I have full control over who I want to bring on, what types of conversations I want to have, where I steer them. So it became this creative outlet, but it also became something that I could build strategy around to drive my business and my brand. And that's why I went, this is interesting, because not only was I able to do that in real time, but then it also created that piece of pillar content, much like that CD I got from the TV station, that I could then break off into many different areas and get in front of many more people. So that's what attracted me to podcasting. But everything up to this point in my journey, from that pivot from being a chef to being a coach to really diving into media, which I've been in the media space for 10 years now, started with writing that book.
Yes.
So I always go back to, are you going to make $1 million from writing a book?
Nope.
Probably not. I mean, it's possible. Don't get me
not
wrong.
from the sale, generally from the sales
Right.
of your book.
But it is possible, but it's not
Yes.
probable, right? So the idea is to leverage the book, much like you would a podcast, to use it to create authority, to create awareness in your space, and
Yes.
to use it as a tool to open up other possibilities and opportunities. And if you have a solid tool and you have that know-how and that strategy, it can lead to really amazing outcomes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing about both the book and the podcast, right? They're two different formats that generate authority and credibility. And so, with a podcast, the longer you do it, the more audience you build, the more credibility you have, the better guests you bring on, all of those things increase your credibility, especially when you can show, like, we are soon in July, actually, we'll be coming up to the 100th episode of Author to Authority. That is an accomplishment very few people achieve, is to hit that 100 episode mark. So I am excited. I've already got some things planned in the works. But, when you have the book, it's kind of the opposite end of the coin, whereas podcast, it's short amounts on a topic, and a book, you can start with the podcast and go to the book where it's really long form. It goes things into more detail, allows to develop that little bit more relationship and demonstrate your expertise. But you combine the two together and it's an amazing combination.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, here's the way I look at it too. Like, when you have a book, from the people I talk to too, and the people we work with, it seems like everyone wants to be an author, but nobody wants to write. Right? That's like the biggest thing. It's like,
hear that all
yeah,
the time.
Yeah, I would love to have a book. Oh, but I'm not gonna. I can't write it. Or they'll start and they'll write 2 pages and then they're done. It's like, oh, it's so hard. And that's part of the process. But what that does is it makes, when you are an author and you do have your book, it gives you instant authority and instant credibility, because very few people are willing to go that distance to create that product. So the major upside of a book is you get instant authority, instant credibility in your field. The double edge to that sword, if there is one, is the fact that content from that book is static, meaning it doesn't change unless you do a volume 2, volume 3, but that probably won't happen until 2, 3, 4 years down the road. So if I buy your book and I read it, I don't have to buy it again to read it again. And even if I read it again, I might take something different from it, but I'm still reading the same thing. It's still the same content. So the podcast has quite the opposite, whereas
exactly
the barrier to entry is very low in podcasting. I mean, it just is. So when you first start your podcast, it doesn't give you instant authority or credibility, but if you create that over time by association, the types of guests you have on and the quality of your conversation and consistency. Consistency in content and volume will give you that authority and credibility. However, what it does do, the double edge to that sword, is it gives you rotating content, dynamic content. So if I listen to your podcast, Kim, this week, and I love it, and I listen to it again in a few days or next week, it's going to be completely different content. So I have to keep coming back time and time again, and I get something different every time. And the fact that you're actually speaking into someone's earbuds creates this really intimate relationship. Where you feel like you know each other, you feel like you're having a conversation together. So combining the two is very powerful, because not only do you have instant authority and credibility through your book, but now you have dynamic revolving content that further creates and strengthens that relationship between you as the content provider and the end user as the content consumer.
Yeah. And I think probably one of the best examples of that is our friend Larry Levine and his Selling from the Heart book. I mean, he combined the best of both worlds. He already had the podcast, and then, he did the book, and his credibility and his authority level just skyrocketed when he combined the two of them together.
Yeah. And I think too, for me, one of my big strategies with books in the past has always been, how do I get a reader out of my book as quickly as possible? And it sounds counterintuitive, but it's not. because what I want them to do is be reading it and be so enthralled with what they're seeing or so into the content that they're like, oh, I want to go interact more. So they get
Yes.
online and they find me. And then I can actually have a conversation with them, because them reading the book and getting a lot out of it, that's great. That's what it's there for. And I really hope it makes a positive impact and it helps them. But what I really want them to do is have a conversation with me or my team.
Yeah.
I want them to reach out and go, this was so awesome, or this changed my life. Like, what can we do now? What's next?
Yeah.
What's the next step? So the faster I can get someone out of my book and into my world, the better.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah. And I agree. And I think the power of the book is the fact that you can dive deeper into subjects and really be able to give, good, solid things that people can grab onto that do change their lives. But like you said, the point is not to have them read the entire book, though we do hope they do read the entire book. But like you said, is to get them out of that book and connected to you. But I think the power of the book is that you can make that deep connection and change a person's lives just with those words. And when you do, when you've proved your expertise and you've proved your value, when you have those conversations are now easier. You don't have to prove yourself when somebody's read your book and then contacted you, because your book has already proved you know what you're talking about. And I think that's a little bit of the difference between a podcast and a book.
It facilitates the conversation, but it goes back to, I think both platforms go back to the power of words.
Yes.
Right?
I agree.
The words are very, very powerful. And at the end of the day, they're consumed in different ways, but they're super, super powerful. So, I mean, I don't know, or I'm not going to get religious here, but Kim, are you Christian?
Yes.
Yes. So am I. So one of the things is in the gospel, one of the first statements, and I believe it was John's gospel, is the word made flesh, right? He is the word. And so words are powerful. So the reason for that is because when God speaks, it is, right? If you remember, If you read in Genesis, he did what? He said, let there be light, and there was light. And that just came from his words. Yes. So when God speaks, it is. That's the power of words. And we are crafted in God's image, right?
Yes.
So it's not like our words, and God's word is infinitely more powerful than our word. Yes. But God confers some of that to us where the words are powerful.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the way that I look at it, is how do you deliver your words and your message to someone else? And you know that those words have power. It's just, how are you going to present them, and what kind of impact are they going to make when they land on that person?
I so agree. Now I want to get into sharing about What's Your Cheesecake, because it's not a book about cheesecake.
It's not, unfortunately. It does make me hungry for cheesecake, though. But the book, here's where it came from. I'll give you the real quick. So I do a lot of things in faith, right? So I knew that I wanted to do another book, but I didn't know what I wanted it to be about. So I remember, talking to you, Kim, and I was like, and I told you that, I was like, I want to do another book. I don't quite know what it is yet. So like, we put this all into motion right from the get, because I knew it was going to happen. I just didn't know when. Then I met some other people who had some other things in the thing. I put that together. And so I had all the pieces in place. I had like Kim and her services and marketing and all these different things. And everything was ready. We just needed the book. That was the only thing that was missing, was the content. And so I was having a conversation with a client. And so, we do a lot of media work, but we also do strategy, because I don't want the media work. My company, MediaMark, is a media company, but it's a media strategy company. So we do all the production, all the back end stuff, but I don't want the media to go out and just be media. I want you to really be able to leverage it and really generate a return from it. So our whole core to what we do is conversations that convert. So we start with a conversation, and then we say, okay, how do we create conversations that convert into some sort of return, and then turn that into media that generates that return? Yes. So you get the return from doing the work, having the conversations, but then that turns into media that goes out, creates your authority, strengthens your authority, strengthens your awareness, and leads to other opportunities. So that's what we do. So I was talking to a client, and we were doing a strategy session, and we were on for like 2 hours. This call was scheduled for an hour. We were on for like 2 hours, and it was someone who is super, they're an expert, complete expert in their field, has all the pieces necessary. And as a matter of fact, the problem was they were too much of an expert, I think, because they had so much expertise that they couldn't boil it down into one thing that makes a difference.
Yes.
And we kept going back and forth, and I was like talking in circles, and I was getting super frustrated. So I said, look, let me put it to you this way. My sister loves the Cheesecake Factory, right? If you're familiar with the Cheesecake Factory, you can look it up. It's a huge restaurant. It's a chain. It's all over the place. And my sister loves it. Like, I think it's okay. I think it's good. Like, I'll eat there. It's never my first choice, but I'll go there. But if you're like, do you want dessert? Do you want cheesecake? That's my first choice. So, but when you go there for the cheesecake, but they make it so convenient. It's a big restaurant laid out and it looks like palatial and all this stuff. And they have a big bar and the big drink menu, and they have their dinner menu is 18 pages long. And it's like everything from steaks to spaghetti to Asian fusion to tacos to chicken. It's everything. But while you're there, it's convenient. They're like jack of all trades, master of none when it comes to like dinner, but it's decent. So you'll go there, have some cocktails, have an appetizer, order your dinner, eat the chicken, then you get the cheesecake. That's why you're really there. So it's like you go there for the cheesecake, but while I'm here, I might as well have the chicken. And so my whole question was to her, like, hearing that, what's your cheesecake? What's that thing that people come to you for? What's your main gig? Mm-hmm. But while they're there and they experience you and they see how good your cheesecake is, now they're going to ask for other things. Now you can flex your muscles in different ways and show a different expertise. But if you're so convoluted that you have 18 pieces of expertise out there, people aren't going to really understand. I mean, making decisions for people is really hard. It's a hard thing to do. So if you have more than two things you're choosing between, the general consensus is you don't choose anything. You just walk away. Mm-hmm. So you have to have that one thing. And then based on that one thing, you can build a powerful platform that then, attracts people. And then based on that experience, they'll say, hey, now that you've done this, let's talk about this. Now that we've done this, let's go there. Like, for instance, one of the things that I get asked all the time through our media is, now that you've built this podcast, now that I have this show, now that we're publishing this book, whatever it may be, what is, do you do websites? And yes, we can do websites. We have done websites in the past, but I would never go out and say we're a website company, because that's not our cheesecake. That's our chicken. Like, we can do it and it'll work functionally with everything. It'll look really good. We'll make it work. But that's not first and foremost where we're going to start our process. Exactly. So that's kind of my thinking, is like, what's your cheesecake? And so this book is designed to walk you through what's your cheesecake, and then how do you capitalize on that, on the best thing that you offer, on your zone of genius.
So let's hone in a little bit, because obviously I know a lot about your book, but there's a couple of things I want you to quickly talk about. So like your product and your platform, and maybe focus in a little bit on your bleeding neck problem.
Yeah. So I had a mentor that, that's what he always used to say, is bleeding neck problem, because, most people, when they market and when they think about their business, they're all involved in the process. We create these processes and we love them because they're our creation. And, if people utilize them the way we set them up as business owners, they work. Mm-hmm. And so we love the process. But when clients come to you, they don't really care about the process, right? True. When people are looking at what you're doing, what they care about is, I have this problem and I need it solved. Mm-hmm. So what's the solution that you have? And then based on that solution, then they'll get into the process. So it's always better if what you provide, what problem you solve, is a bleeding neck problem, meaning it's a problem people need solved right now. They need it. And you don't want to spend, like, there are some people that will re-educate the market, but I've tried to do that in the past with certain business ideas, and it's not fun. It doesn't work. It's like, it's really hard to convince someone they have a problem that they don't know they have yet, and then give them a solution for that problem that you just helped them create. It's like, I didn't have this problem. Now I have this problem, and now I have to buy the solution. Like, how does that work? So
it almost seems slimy. It's almost like you're trying to manipulate the person into buying something.
It would be like going into a doctor and then the doctor breaking your arm so he could fix it. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what it is. It's like, your arm doesn't hurt. Are you sure? Let me see it. Crack. Oh, that's bad. Now let's get it fixed. Like, so that's kind of
credit card.
yeah. It'll only be 10 grand. That's kind of what it's like. But I mean, so if you could go, and the other thing is, if you have a problem, like, that's what business is, right? You solve a problem. Mm-hmm. And if you know that people have this problem, and you speak to them based on understanding their problem, because maybe it's something you've had, a problem that you've overcome, then they're going to connect with you deeper, faster, and at a better, at a more impactful level. Because think about it, like, if, let's say, for instance, here's a good example, let's say you woke up tomorrow and you had this weird mark on your arm, right? And it really hurt, and it's like on your wrist, and you're looking at it and you're like, I don't know what that is, I've never seen anything like this before, I don't get it. And then you're walking around outside and you're like thinking about it as you go about your daily business, and then you look over and you see someone walking next to you who has that same exact mark that's beginning to get better. What are you going to do? You're going to walk over to them and go, what is that? Yeah. What did you do? And you're not going to ask them, are you a doctor? Did you go to medical school? Or you're just going to say, what did you do? And then if it worked, you're going to consider doing that, right? Because they had the same problem. They know it just as well as you do. So if you can explain to the people that you work with, or your prospects, or whoever you're speaking to, their problems, and you identify with it and can explain it better than they can, they're going to automatically believe that you can help them fix it.
Exactly.
So I call that painting the picture of possibility. So you want to show them, look, I know what you're feeling. I know what this is like. And let me show you how I fixed it for myself. And let me paint the picture of possibility for what your life can look like if we fix it for you. Yeah. And based on that is what's going to make them say, like, it's like if you were a weight loss coach, right? You wouldn't go to someone who needs to lose weight or wants to lose weight and go, oh, okay, here's your problem. You want to lose weight. So you're never going to eat another carb the rest of your life. You're never going to eat anything you like ever again. You're going to go to the gym 3 times a day from now on forever, and you're going to be in bed by 7 o'clock every night. They're going to be like, I'd rather be heavy. Like, like, what is this? So you go to someone and you're like, if that's their problem, they know they're looking for solutions or whatever, you can say, just think about it. If you would drop that 30, 40, 50, whatever it may be pounds, you're going to have more energy when you wake up in the morning. You're going to think clearer and be more productive throughout the day. You can, play with your kids more because you're going to have that extra energy. You're going to be more active, and the experience of your life is just going to be better overall. I know, because I lost 70 pounds in my life, and man, my whole attitude even changed. I was like, and I can say that because I did do that. And so pointing it that way, when you talk to someone and you vividly talk about what you experienced or what other people you've worked with have experienced, they're going to go, okay, what do I have to do? Yeah. And that's when they'll be willing to not eat as many carbs or what have you, eat less calories, go to the gym, do those things. But you're not selling the process. You're selling the solution. And then it has to be a solution to a problem that people already have. And the other thing is, people think if I make the solution more complicated, then people are going to pay more for it, or it's going to be more valuable. And that's not true. Simplicity is value. Like, if my fridge breaks and I call a repairman to come fix it, if he comes, I will pay the guy more if he comes and fixes it in 10 minutes and just says, there, it's fixed, here's your bill, than if the guy comes and goes, oh, I can do this, but it's going to take me 8 weeks. I have to go get these parts and this parts. And look, let me show you the blueprints of how this works. And this is how we're going to do it. And then I need you to hold this. And I'm like, no, I need it fixed now. And I'm paying you for your expertise so that you can fix it. It's like that old meme. They have that, it's like some guy comes and your sink's it's leaking. And I've seen this online before. And the plumber comes and he goes in and looks at it and goes, interesting. And he takes his wrench out and he twists one screw and it's fixed. And he's like, that'll be $300. You're like, $300? You were only here for 3 minutes. He goes, yeah, but it took me 20 years to learn which screw I had to turn how much in order to get it done in 3 minutes. That's what you're paying me for, right? Yes. So that's like all part of what's the bleeding neck problem and how. And so there's 3 questions. I'll kind of cap it off with this. There's 3 questions we start with every single client we work with. And we want to get really clear on these because clarity is the key to everything. And so these 3 questions are, and you've probably heard 2 of these before, and most business owners, they understand it, but they don't necessarily go deep enough to get the real impact of it. So the 3 questions are, number 1, what problem do you solve? Simple enough. What's the problem that you solve? Number 2 is, who do you solve it for? Who needs this problem solved, right? Again, simple enough. But the third one, the one I had to learn the hard way that I think a lot of people miss is, when you're solving that problem for those people at scale, what do you want the experience of your life to look and feel like? And if you can set up doing that with those systems and processes and set that system up from the start, then you can build something that allows you to enjoy the fruits of your labor. Because what I did was I answered the first 2 questions, and it took me about 8 years to answer those questions, by the way. Now, it's not going to take everyone that long, but it does take time, and it's something you have to consistently be working at and trying things and failing and trying and failing and trying again and taking lessons and skills from each of those things. That's such the life of an entrepreneur. But
No,
when
it
I
took me
learned,
a few years to really nail it down.
yeah, it takes time, right? When you learn and that doesn't mean that you're not making money along the way. I mean, you'll find things that hit in certain ways, but you have to just keep going. So when you find what it is you do and who you do it for, I got so pumped up and excited that I'm like, I'm just going to go do it as much as I can, wherever I can. So I called it my Wild West days, right? I was all over the place. If you called and you needed me, I was there. I didn't care what time it was, when it was, what was happening. It was just crazy. And so doing that, I built, I'm very proud that I took my business from startup at $0 to 6 figures plus in revenue in 6 months' time, which is pretty quick. I mean, it happened, but I was working a lot and I was working hard. And that's when I looked up and went, okay, we need to figure this out, because I realized that if I wasn't behind my desk, everything stopped. So if I wanted to go away for a weekend, or if I got a speaking gig and couldn't be there, or if something happened, then everything stopped. So that's when I said, okay, what do I want the experience of my life to look and feel like?
Yes.
Here's what it is. Here's the exact image. Now, what do I have to do to make that happen? I have a working model here. So then I started bringing more people into my team. I started automating things in certain areas. And, we turned it into this machine that not only is able to serve people, but it's sustainable and it's scalable for the long term. And it allows me to make the biggest impact, stay in my zone of genius, have my cheesecake,
Yes.
while letting other people also do the same around me, and empowering the people on my team and that I work with to show up and make their impact as well. And ultimately, it serves the clients at a much deeper, more profound level. And that's kind of what we look to build with our clients, is that type of machine, and using podcasting, publishing, media, those and the such.
Yeah. Wow. These is what our initial conversations were like between Mario and I. He's asking me these questions and I'm giving him answers, and he's like, yeah, give me more. I'm like, what do you mean give me more? That's my good stuff. He's like, yeah, give me more.
You got to keep going. And that's the thing, like as an entrepreneur, I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the tips I give people when we're talking is like, when you think you have the answer, you need to go 3 levels deeper.
Yeah.
Sometimes more, but at minimum, you need to go 3 levels deeper, because, it's always going a little bit further than you think you need to go. And it's the same thing with your business, right? If you hit the goal that you want today, then your goal changes. You're never at that destination. Like if your goal was to make, $100,000 this month, and on the 15th of the month, you made $100,000. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to say, oh, I'm done for the month. I'm going to go lay in bed till next month comes. No, you're going to go out and set a new goal. You're going to say, okay, now I want to make 150,000 this month. So you never really get there. You always keep going. And it's the same thing with clarity. I mean, you get to a certain point, but then it's like, how can I simplify this? And that's what I mean. The magic is in the simplification, not in the complexity. I think it was Einstein that said anyone can take something simple and complicate it, but it takes a real genius to take something complicated and make it simple.
It's simple. So Mario, we're just about out of time here. So how can people connect with you if they want to find out more about podcasting and media and your book and all these wonderful things? How do they connect?
Yeah. So the good thing about me is I'm pretty much everywhere. So you have to try really hard not to find me if you're looking. But across all social media, of course, my website and our site you can go to is mediamar.io. So that's our website, and you can go check us out there, and all the social links, everything you need is there, the podcast, all of that fun stuff. But yeah, just, find me. My podcast is called The Conversation Guy, so you can go look that up, and that'll pop up. And I drop an episode 6 days a week. I have different formats throughout the week that we do, but it's a lot of fun, and I love having conversations with people. So if you're interested in anything we talked about, my recommendation would be go schedule a call and let's hop on and have a conversation about it and just explore the possibilities. I mean, I'm not a hard sell kind of guy, so I'm not going to be like, do you need to do this, 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 and this? But we can brainstorm, we can strategize, we can see what the possibilities are. And, I can guarantee you that in that conversation, you're going to walk away with more value than you started with, whether we decide to collaborate or not.
Yeah.
But I just love having the conversation and learning about you and learning about other people and seeing what the possibilities are. It's so much fun. So yeah, you can go to mediamar.io and get all of that stuff.
Well, thank you very much. This has been Mario Porreca and Kim Thompson-Pinder on the Author to Authority podcast. Thanks so much for joining us, and we will see you on the very next episode. Bye now.